Okay.
So can you start out by introducing yourself?
Yes, my name is Anna Monte, and I am a sound designer, and I work for Delta Soundworks. That's my
And
company.
you founded Delta Soundworks, right?
Yeah, I co-founded
Okay, and how long have you guys been in business?
since June 2016.
Okay. Oh, so fairly new. And what is the
Very
company?
new, yeah.
What does the company do? You have a lot of work on your
Uh,
website for being so new.
I know. We've been busy for sure. I mean, I come from traditional media, like from traditional sound production, and my business partner has been a sound engineer for 10 years, so
Uh-huh.
we're only new to the VR game, but I think everyone is.
Uh-huh.
But as far as yeah, projects go, we definitely did a lot for the last 2 years. Yeah, thankfully.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, what was the question?
Um, well, you answered the question about your role at the company. You're the founder.
hmm
What's your background and how did you get into this industry?
To audio industry
Mm-hmm.
or to immersive audio?
Both.
I studied music industry and technology in California.
Mm-hmm.
So I did music production, like recording arts, for my bachelor. And on my last semester, I actually took a class called Audio for Video. And I just fell in love, like Foley's and all that stuff, like manipulating sound and creating stuff out of noise, let's say, and
Yeah.
not necessarily music. I also had like a lot of electronic music classes that talked about musique concrète and all these like John Cage kind of stuff that you just create a soundtrack with appliances and stuff, and I just thought that was amazing. But there's not a lot of places that you can study sound design actually,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up in Germany because I did a internship at a theater at the city where I live right now, and I
Mm-hmm.
just fell in love with the city and ended up staying here. And while I was at the doing the internship, I met someone from a film academy,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually were recording some voiceover stuff. And it's like, oh, where are you from and what do you study? I'm like, yeah, I'm studying sound at the film academy. And I never heard that you could study sound design. And then I looked into it, and it was for free. Like, that's amazing. My graduation year was actually the last year that you could, as a foreigner, study for free. Like, I didn't pay any tuition
Wow.
for the 2.5 years of my master's
Mm-hmm.
compared to paying California State University, which was a lot for foreigners. So that was really, really amazing. And I mean, now they charge for international students, but it's still compared to the US, like I think they charge 1,000 per semester. That's still
Wow.
pretty doable
Yeah.
for a really amazing, like the film academy that I went to is really like they get nominated for student Oscars almost every year. They have tons of people that leave the animation institute and end up at Pixar and like all the big guys in the US. So it's really cool. We
That's
just got
awesome.
like one of the productions that we did, student production, we they got nominated for an Annie Award. So like as a student to be nominated for the VR production is really cool with people like Google Spotlight and all the big guys. So that
Uh-huh.
was really, it shows the level that they're at. So it's
Right.
really cool.
So you kind of already answered this question about the type of audio that you create and record in the interactive realm. It sounds
hmm
like you like making making
Noise.
noise.
Yeah. Yeah, like I've been doing, like I said, traditional formats like movies and stuff for like 5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
But I got into immersive audio when we founded Delta.
Uh-huh.
And the applications are different and the approach is a little bit different than traditional media. And that's something that's actually still being discovered, like the whole VR, AR, MR, all the R's.
So how is
They
it
are
different?
as far as the sound goes, you are kind of like the workflow is non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
It's really difficult. I jump from software to software depending on the project that we're doing because VR is kind of swimming in between game and traditional media, and you have the linear formats that people don't like saying VR, like 360 videos. They aren't actually VR. So, but those are projects that we get that also require immersive audio. So that means like a surround sound that works with your headphones. So you have the feeling that the sound is coming from everywhere. But how we implement it in the platform in the end is very different depending on what the experience is going to be. Like the Stanford Heart that you talked about was interactive, so we actually had to go straight to Unity. I was designing using regular software that you use for audio editing, but my business partner was in charge of implementing the audio and making sure everything works, and that was done straight in Unity. But other films that are linear, you just get a equi-rectangular video and you just do it in your sound editing program. And you also have linear that somewhat has interactivity also, like the one that was nominated for the Annie Awards. It was done in Unreal. So the story was linear. You couldn't change anything. It went from 0 to whatever minutes. But you could, to some extent, it was to some extent interactive in the sense that you could approach the characters and listen to them whispering and that kind of stuff, or look behind a wall, but the story is continuing without you. It's not like you can click or anything and you influence the story in any way. So that was almost like treated like a game kind of, but not at the same time. Yeah.
What software do you use for your audio editing?
Pro Tools.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going off script here, but what's sort of the weirdest thing that you've done to generate some kind of a sound effect?
Oh, I get this question so often.
You
I don't
do?
even know the answer because it's my first ever sound design that I did during this audio for video class. It's really funny because my best friend at the time was a German exchange student, and I was taking this class. I'm like, oh, I need to do this scene that I give voices to some aliens. Can you help me out? And I had her say some weird German things that I then reversed and like added some weird sound effects to her voice. And until today, we laugh because we think all the time about, what does she say? Like, pork ribs don't taste well if you don't eat salad with it, or something, like some random German phrase that I just like manipulated in the software, and then it became like and we laugh until today. But there's always weird stuff. Oh, what's my most recent one? I don't know. There's always weird stuff that I use to make sounds. I've recorded my cat many times to make monster sounds. I've recorded myself, like doing like weird stuff with my mouth.
That's
You
hilarious.
gotta get creative.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Going back to the Heart project, I think I read something where initially there was no sound in the experience, and then you met the creators at a trade show, and then that is how the relationship started.
Yeah.
Were they initially sold on integrating sound, or how did they get convinced that this was, that they should have sound in their project?
Yeah, it was really funny. That was a very naive moment, to be honest, because it was, I think, 3 months. The timeline of us starting Delta was June. We started Delta. Like on paper, we did our own like contract between the two of us, and then we applied for some startup awards that there is in Germany. It's called the Creative Pilots, Germany Creative Pilots, and they give an award for the most, like the 32 most creative startups in Germany every year, and like very different areas. You have sound, you have design people, and we ended up winning that award like 2 months after we founded the company, and we went representing them in a booth in this trade show called Cebit. I don't even think it exists anymore. Like they stopped doing it, but it was a really, really huge tech and IT trade show. And they had area that was for VR that was kind of weird and surreal because they had like a drone racing area in the middle that was super loud with
Uh-huh.
drones flying everywhere, and then like mini booths around it, and like some nerds that would just set up a table and there was a laptop on the table, and you're like, what the hell is this person doing? And the two of them, they're called David and David, the two Stanford guys. Um, the guy that's in charge of all the medical stuff and making sure that everything is right medically. He is the top pediatric surgeon in Stanford, and they're just there with their laptop, like, "Hi, would you like to check our experience?" And we're like, "Yeah, whatever, yeah, sure." And then we check it, we were blown away. Like, it's really, really an amazing experience. Unfortunately, it's not open to the public. It's really just for the medical schools.
Uh-huh.
Like, it's not on Oculus or anything. But yeah, we checked it out, and in our naive side, and we're like, oh, there's no sound. You guys need sound. And initially we thought UI sounds, like clicky, clicky, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, do you guys need that? But in fact, sound is the first thing that a doctor uses to diagnose a patient when they listen to the stethoscope. And the training that the med students get is incredibly important, that they train their ears for the different sounds that the heart makes. Like, that's the first thing. They listen to the sound and like, okay, the rhythm is different. So they might have this, they might have that. And that's how the journey started with them, actually.
How did you record the heart sounds?
That was also a very long process. Initially, we wanted to record original heart stuff, but obviously, like, we're talking about babies, and that's super difficult to find. And some of the diseases, there's like, I don't know, 1,000 kids in the whole world that had this, or even less than that. So it was really difficult to find the recordings. We had some reference sounds that we could kind of check the timing. We also had numbers on paper because they call it lub dub, the sound that we know, like lub dub, lub dub. And what the doctors think that makes that sound are two valves that are closing. So when they close, they do the lub, and the other valve is the dub. And you can measure how many milliseconds are between them. So if one is later or earlier, then it's a certain problem. And if you have a hole in your heart, for example, a new sound is introduced. Like, the main heart problem with kids is called VSD, ventricular septal defect, and you have a hole between the two chambers of your heart. So besides also doing the lub dub, there's like a blood going through the whole sound, which is like a garden hose. So instead of doing like lub dub, it does like a lub dub, lub dub, and it's really freaky. Like, the first time you listen to that, it's like, what? That's a heart? Like, it totally sounds really weird. So depending on the heart problem, like S1 is the first valve, starts at 0. S2 starts at whatever milliseconds. We got all that data for each heart problem. Like, of course, an average of the numbers. And we kind of analyze the frequency characteristics of each element. Like, okay, how does a lub sound like? How does a dub? And how does this murmur that happens when there's a hole? And we rebuilt it from scratch, actually using synthesizers and recording random stuff ourselves, getting some parts of real heart recordings of like healthy hearts, because the lub dub and lub dub are always the same, actually. Like, the sound quality is the same. And you also, it was very important that it was medically accurate. So from a sound design point of view, it's not the most amazing sound ever created, like far from it. But it was very important that it actually sounds like a stethoscope, because that's what the students will be using to learn the sounds. But the other part was, you can teleport yourself inside the heart and see the heart from the inside, like, that's the valve, whatever, that's the other valve. And for that part of the experience, you had to have individual parts of the sounds, because inside the heart, the sound was spatialized. So I hear the lub from there, I hear the dub from there. Oh, and the hole is behind me. I need to look there. Yeah, that's the hole. So that
Wow.
was also very important for us to create the different compartments of the heart
Uh-huh.
beat. Yeah.
Once you integrated the sound, where was the client like, oh my God, how did we think this was going to be a good product without sound? I mean, did they come around?
No, no, we didn't have to convince them
But I mean, were
that
they
much.
pretty?
They knew. They were really happy about it, but they knew from the beginning this is important.
Uh-huh.
They knew, especially the doctor. Like the other guy is the 3D modeling person
Mm-hmm.
in charge of Lighthouse Inc. That's the company that developed the app.
Uh-huh.
And David Axelrod, Dr. David Axelrod is the surgeon, and he knew from the beginning, like, we need sound. We just didn't have the time. Like,
Uh-huh.
in reality, inside story, and that stays here.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
It actually has nothing to do with Stanford besides the Stanford stamp because he works there. As far as money, it was all financed, like privately
Uh-huh.
financed and
Uh-huh.
stuff. So, of course, we had to go like phase by phase, like what's our priority? And of course, the visuals was the biggest priority for them.
Uh-huh.
And they knew, like, yes, we definitely need sound, but we need to see where we get the financing in the
Right.
end.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, just trying to think of what you already answered. Hang on one second.
No worries.
Why you mentioned that there is like an increasing demand for sound for VR. Is that true? And why do you think that is?
Increasing demand. The thing is that sound is always running after picture,
Yeah.
and that stays true for VR. Um, Unfortunately, people like they know sound is important, but when it comes to paying the price, they don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard enough to convince people and to explain to people what is stereo, what is surround. When you get into the spatial audio realm, that gets even more complicated. Like people don't get it, people don't know why it's important.
Mm-hmm.
So of course they value sound for their production, but as far as VR goes, immersive audio is a must.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to be in that space 100%, and you need the sound source to come from where the thing is at. So that it's still a challenge to convince people that sound is important for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's still yeah.
I'm sure you must have experiences where they see the project with the sound and then they become convinced. I mean, have you witnessed that
With
happen? Like what?
without the sound.
No, once they put the sound in, then they realize
Yeah.
what a big deal it
Yeah.
is, how
Yeah.
impactful it is.
Yeah, definitely. Like as far as traditional media goes, obviously like documentaries, even though the sound is so important because it's all about the dialogue and the story, and not that with other films it isn't, but in documentary it's extra important. And
Mm-hmm.
people just leave sound as like the last thing, like, okay, whatever, fix it in the post, that kind
Mm-hmm.
of stuff. The before and after for a documentary is huge. That's
Mm-hmm.
really a huge eye opener, and especially because you can't do ADR with documentaries. Usually, you can't go back and get the characters to redo their lines in the studio like with other movies.
Right.
So once you clean the sound and make it sound good, and people actually start understanding what people are saying, then they're definitely happy about it. But that doesn't mean that they, by the time they do their next film, that they remember that. It's incredible. It's really frustrating. It takes like 2 to 3 films with bad movies for the director to finally get it. Like, okay, yes, we need a sound from the beginning. And even then, it's like, yes, sound is very important to me, but you get $100 a day, and we're gonna shoot 12 hours and that kind of stuff. It's
Yeah.
still, yeah. But the
Um.
budget for VR is definitely different,
Uh-huh.
so that's helping a lot that there's more budget.
Oh, why?
I guess because the visuals need a lot, and then just
Mm-hmm.
the whole budget ends up being bigger for the
Uh-huh.
production. Yeah.
Okay, what this is a dumb question. What's ADR that you just mentioned?
Sorry, automated dialogue replacement. It's just going like the dubbing.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest mistakes people make when You kind of talked about this a little bit, especially in documentary, not paying attention to the quality of the sound initially when they're out recording it. But in terms of integrating it specifically into an interactive experience.
The biggest mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of um, there's a lot of projects where there's one dude doing everything,
Mm-hmm.
and where we sometimes don't have control over the sound. Like
Mm-hmm.
everything is being done in a game engine, and then we're just delivering the assets
Uh-huh.
instead of actually having control. And that gets really tricky because they don't have the sound experience to see, like, okay, the sound should be louder, should be quieter. Actually, this isn't working for the experience. Like, they're just concentrated on, um, I'll integrate the sound and that's it. And that's far from it. Like, there's still a lot to be done once you put it in the experience. Like, even from a matter of spatializing the sound, we've had a lot of times that, I don't know, you have a church bell that should be on the right and it's actually coming from back left and
Uh-huh.
people don't even notice it. Like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean that the sound is wrong? It's like, yeah, the sound's supposed to be coming from one direction and it's coming from the other. Like, it's just not something people pay attention to. The sound is like, yeah, I hear the church, whatever, that's it.
Yeah.
And that's not the case.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
I definitely need to improve my sensitivity. I'm the person who produces a film, and I'm like, oh, next time I'll do a better job with the sound. I'm terrible about it. So what's the most fun thing about doing sound for interactive media?
It's a very big question. It's a very good question. Yeah, I think just from a point of view of the teamwork and the fact that sound has gotten a little bit more attention than the traditional media. I
Mm-hmm.
think people that have more experience know from the beginning they want good sound, they budget things for good sound, and having the sound team from day one is just really, really beneficial to everyone.
Uh-huh.
And with traditional media, you're usually like the last one, like, hey, jump right in and kind of solve my problems. And I think VR or interactive media, people went a little bit away from this just come in to solve my problems. Like,
Right.
we actually want a good experience. We want it to be immersive. What can we do together? And even if the budget isn't there, it's from day one, like, okay, what can be done with this budget? And like, you feel more like part of the team
Right.
somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think I've got enough material. This is awesome.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna. I really appreciate
You're
it. I
welcome.
may have to follow up with a couple of questions. So I'll
Yeah.
hit you up for your email address through Facebook just to clarify a couple
Okay.
things when I'm transcribing it.
Okay.
But
Sounds
thank you
good.
so much. I really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. You're welcome.
Say hi to John for me when you
Yeah.
see him.
We'll do. Oh, that's only in March.
That's before I'll see him.
Okay.
See you
Sounds
later.
good.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.